evening and welcome to BATV News. I'm Kalila Reynolds. The Ministry of Finance has stepped in at the last minute to bring teachers back to the negotiating table. At about 3:30 this afternoon, the Jamaica Teachers Association, JTA, released a statement rejecting the government's wage offer and calling an urgent press conference for tomorrow morning. The JTA said their members were of the view that there is now a serious trust deficit between the union and the government. But the JTA withdrew the statement about an hour later, saying they'd just received a response from the Ministry of Finance. The teachers' union has been in wage negotiations with the government for several months. The government is hoping to finalize an agreement before it presents the next budget ahead of the start of the new fiscal year on April 1. In the latest offer, the government proposed a 4-year wage contract as opposed to the usual 2 years. The Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, PSOJ, is postponing its crime summit originally scheduled for this month. In a statement today, the PSOJ says the critical stakeholders for national security have indicated the need to refine preparations and to be assured of the availability of human resources to carry out the agreed outcomes of the summit. Additionally, the organization says the timing of the summit conflicts with the urgent preparations of critical changes to crime laws. As a result, many of the people essential to the success of the summit will not be able to adequately participate in the 2-day event. The PSOJ says the start of the budget process and debate is also coming up, so they've decided to postpone the summit until these urgent matters are resolved. The initial public offering, IPO, for Elite Diagnostics has been oversubscribed by more than $1 billion Jamaican dollars. The medical company launched its prospectus late last year and made an offer on December 11. The company expected to raise 141 million Jamaican dollars from the IPO. But when the offer closed on February 5, they'd received some $1.2 billion in offers. Nordia Francis Williams reports.
Elite Diagnostics offered just over 70 million ordinary shares for sale to raise $141 million. But co-lead broker Sagicor Investments Jamaica is advising that the company got raised more than 8 times its target. Sagicor Investments says it received over 3,000 applications for more than 614 million units. That's a value of over $1.2 billion. In the prospectus, the company outlined the 6 reserved share applicants and a general public pool. Directors and employees of the company were allocated 4,060,000 shares. In that category, 12 applications for shares valued at approximately $3 million were received. These applicants were issued 100% of the amounts applied for. Affiliated doctors were offered 700,000 shares. 5 applications were received valued at $1.4 million. These applicants were also allocated all of the amounts assigned. 420,000 shares were reserved for affiliated entities. Only 2 applications for $560,000 were received, so they were allocated all the shares requested. Referring Doctors Tier 1 got an allocation of 6,160,000 shares. A total of 8 applications for shares came in valued at approximately $2.2 million. These applicants were allocated 100% of the amounts assigned. Referring Doctors Tier 2 were offered 1.9 million shares. 8 applications for $2 million worth of shares were received. These applicants were allocated 100% of the amounts assigned. Medical practitioners were offered 6,160,000 shares. 54 applications valued at nearly $39 million were received. The first 70,000 units were allocated 100%. The rest were allocated 10%. And over 3,000 people applied for shares in the general public pool category. The first 15,000 units got all they asked for, but the rest were allocated only 3%. For BATV News, I'm Nordia Francis Williams.
President of the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, Dr. Warren Smith, is defending the bank's record of lending to Jamaica. This after the Observer newspaper published a scathing editorial against the regional bank, accusing it of cutting its lending to the country when Jamaica needed it most. Here's more. In December, the CDB approved a $172 million program of assistance for Jamaica over 4 years. But an editorial in the Jamaica Observer on December 20 opined, when Jamaica was facing tough challenges from 2013 to 2016, the CDB, we've been made aware, drastically reduced its support. However, now that Jamaica is getting back on its feet, the bank has increased its support by over 400%. Speaking with BATV News in Barbados last week, CDB President Dr. Warren Smith said they wrote a lengthy response to the Observer, but the newspaper never published it. He defended the bank's record of lending to Jamaica.
CDB put a considerable amount of money into Jamaica, including the largest loan that we have ever made in the history of this bank, which is $100 million, a policy-based loan to Jamaica. And unfortunately, Jamaica went into a period of decline, which ultimately led to a very severe adjustment program. During that time, we weren't in a position, because we're a bank and we have to be very cognizant of our exposures and the implications of that. And Jamaica has always been the largest borrower from the bank.
However, Dr. Smith did concede that the CDB scaled back its lending to Jamaica when the country was experiencing tough economic times.
We had to take a decision to pull in our horns, so to speak, as it relates to the fund that we use to provide most of our financing, that is our ordinary capital. It did not mean, however, that we stopped lending to Jamaica. In fact, we did a $35 million loan to Jamaica during that same period, again a policy-based loan.
He says the bank had to protect itself or it wouldn't be able to do anyone any good.
We don't help Jamaica when we overexpose ourselves to Jamaica. What it does is going to have a kickback effect on us, where we're probably going to be regarded as a less stable lending institution by the rating agencies, which then means we're going to have difficulty raising money on the international capital market at attractive rates.
The current program of assistance is to be used to advance education, governance, citizen security, environmental sustainability, and energy security. And when we come back, the Chinese government is planning its largest investment yet in Jamaica. We'll tell you what it is after the break. Welcome back. The Chinese government is planning its largest investment yet in Jamaica, some $6 billion to develop an industrial park and special economic zone in Nain, St. Elizabeth. The project would complement another major Chinese project in the area, Jisco's Alpart operations in Nain. The announcement was made by Executive Vice Governor of Gansu Province in China, Huang Kwang, at the signing of an agreement with Jamaica's mining minister, Mike Henry. According to Minister Henry, it's the largest investment ever contemplated in Jamaica. The ministry says it's also the first overseas investment for Gansu Province. It's intended to move Jamaica from exporting raw materials to developing value-added manufacturing and fabrication industries led by the bauxite minerals sector. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, who witnessed the signing, says he fully supports the investment. He's assigned Dr. Horace Chang to work alongside Minister Henry and their Chinese counterparts to fast-track the project. Credit Scotia has changed its name to Lasco Microfinance Limited following the acquisition by Lasco Financial Services Limited last November. Lasco Financial acquired the company from Scotia Jamaica Microfinance Company. The new owners say the move has grown the entity's loan portfolio to just under $2 billion with no job cuts. They say the merger has also almost tripled the loans team to just under 90 across the 13 offices island-wide, positioning Lasco Microfinance Limited as one of the island's leading loan companies. Researchers are calling on the private sector to fund more research. Postgraduate scholar at UWI-Mona, Shanika Lester, says the private sector hasn't been cooperative in the island's research developments. She was a guest on the latest episode of BATV's business discussion show On Point. Andrew Laidley reports.
The University of the West Indies, Mona, wrapped up its 2018 Research Days last Friday. It's an academic expo where researchers get to showcase their work to the public and prospective investors. But according to UWI scholar Shanika Lester, the kind of funding researchers expected from the private sector hasn't been forthcoming.
I think that the private sector could do more in terms of
Or you
research.
could do more to go out there and find the work.
Maybe it's both. And I think that is why even Research Day is important, because I think it's an attempt by the university to bridge that gap between the private sector and the academic community.
But are the researchers reaching out to the private sector?
I'm not sure how much of the private sector is invited to some of those talks, but possibly.
Ms. Lester argues that there's a general disregard for the role research plays in national development. She's also calling on the private sector to show more interest.
I'm not sure if it's just a shortcoming of the university. I don't know where that ball falls, but I do agree with you. I think research is what should drive development. I don't think at all levels. I don't think we see that. I don't think the general public, even policymakers, even those at the technical and strategic level, understand how important research is in development. So I'm not sure if maybe UWI could do more in informing persons about that importance, or the private sector need to show more interest in
Well, I know
research.
there's a...
The UWI scholar says the government hasn't given much support to her research project either, although she says the benefits could be great for agriculture.
While the government did not provide us with any financing, I guess I will use this platform to say that yes, a project such as this do need co-financing, because farmers need their adaptive capacity to be increased. Yes, it's good when you install an irrigation system, but climate is something that is erratic, it's ever changing. And so the best way to adapt is using knowledge. You know, it's improving your agronomic practices, it's farmers becoming more business experts within their field.
For BATV News, I'm Andrew Laidley.
Science and Technology Minister Dr. Andrew Wheatley says government will be taking an active approach to using open source software as part of its thrust to transform information and communication technology in Jamaica. Open source software allows persons who've bought a software license the right to study, change, and share the software to anyone and for any purpose, unlike proprietary software. Popular examples include the web browser Firefox and Apache's OpenOffice, a competitor to Microsoft Office. Minister Wheatley says many developed countries have adopted open source software as an integral part of their public sector operations with great success. He says he will be forming a technical working group to come up with an action plan for government services to move to open source software. And when we come back, 19 Jamaican women taken into custody during a raid in Antigua. Are they victims of human trafficking? This and more in regional and international news up next. Welcome back. Time now for regional and international news. Investigations are ongoing in Antigua to determine if 19 Jamaican women taken into custody during a raid Saturday morning are victims of human trafficking. More from ABS News.
The operation was carried out simultaneously at the Jamdong nightclub and Wendy's bar and restaurant. The update came early Saturday morning through a release from the communications officer in the Ministry of Public Safety and Labour, Dr. Carol Hodge. She says the operations were carried out following information of possible unlawful activities at these establishments relating to human trafficking and other offences. In the end, 19 women, all Jamaicans between the ages of 21 and 35, were taken into protective care as it is believed they have been trafficked. 11 of the women were taken from Wendy's bar and restaurant, while the others were taken from Jamdong nightclub. Investigations are being carried out to determine if all have been victims of human trafficking. Meanwhile, 4 people are assisting the authorities as the investigation intensifies. Members from the Police, Defence Force, Office of National Drug and Money Laundering Control Policy, Public Safety and Labour Ministry, Immigration Department, Health Ministry, and Emergency Medical Services carried out the joint operation. The Public Safety Ministry is leading the effort to combat human trafficking in this country and says it will continue to go after perpetrators and assist the victims. More information is expected to be released in coming days about these investigations. The country was placed on the Tier 2 watch list in last year's report on human trafficking by the U.S. State Department. It is the 4th straight year that the country has had this ranking. According to the 2017 report, the government of Antigua and Barbuda does not fully meet the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking, but is making significant efforts to do so.
Oxfam's CEO, Mark Goldring, says he's deeply ashamed over accusations the organization's staff used prostitutes in Haiti in the aftermath of the 2010 earthquake. He told ITV News he's sorry for the incident, but denies the charity covered it up. Here's more.
This was a primary school full of children. A snapshot of the devastation caused by an earthquake which struck this country with brutal force, killing thousands, making millions homeless in a second. 8 years on, Haiti has now been hit by revelations that aid workers sent to help them were in fact exploiting them. After it emerged, senior Oxfam staff paid Haitian prostitutes for sex.
I'm deeply ashamed about Oxfam's behaviour. Then everybody, the 25,000 staff and volunteers, are compromised by this. The hundreds of thousands of people who support Oxfam every month are compromised by this, and to everybody I do apologise.
In 2011, 4 workers were fired and 3 quit following an internal investigation, but Oxfam did not reveal the details of their departures, referring publicly to serious misconduct. Oxfam, though, denies a cover-up.
Oxfam had no formal obligation to tell anybody anything. This wasn't a public story, it was an internal investigation.
Surely you had a moral obligation to tell the public the exact details of this episode.
I'm not sure that I agree. Oxfam chose to go to the public and say, we have got this wrong and we're trying to get it right.
Well, the public didn't know what happened. They knew that staff had been dismissed for misconduct.
They didn't, and as you've already asked me, I've said now, if I was in that role, I would choose to say more.
You say more. What do you think they should have said then?
I think we should have been open that there was sexual misconduct and that involved the use of prostitutes.
Isn't the truth of it that Oxfam didn't reveal the full details of this episode because, as an organisation, you'd be worried that the public would be horrified and they would ultimately stop donating to Oxfam? Do you think it would have affected donations?
I think in the short term that would have been highly likely.
The Department for International Development, which last year gave Oxfam more than £30 million, says the charity has serious questions to answer. It will now review whether or not to continue to fund the charity, which faces the biggest crisis in its 75-year history. Daniel Hewitt, ITV News.
High production costs in Nigeria are making it tough to do business. One solution is for small businesses to pool their resources. Al Jazeera's Ahmed Idris reports.
Ali Bashir is one of 20 technicians helping to keep the wheels of the machinery turning at this industrial zone on the outskirts of the city. He moved his small workshop here 3 years ago. Running his own independent business was just too expensive.
Business was tough at my former business place. I had to pay for electricity, rent, water, security all alone. But here I am, saving a lot in overheads.
His business repairs used machine parts and fabricates new ones. As businesses cluster, they pool their money to pay for electricity, security, and other services at rates lower than standalone factories. There are more than 400 small oil mill plants in this industrial cluster. At the peak of their operations, they produce 100,000 litres of cooking oil a day. Their coming together has eased operational costs for their owners. As the Nigerian business environment gets tougher, other businesses are embracing this idea that is helping to keep many small businesses afloat. As a result, many have recalled workers they laid off.
We've
reabsorbed 3,000 workers because most of us are making a profit, although not as much as we would like. In fact, we can expand and get more raw materials. Every unemployed youth in town can get a job here.
Manufacturers still struggle to pay bills as cost of production remain higher than they hoped for, as Nigeria suffers from inflation and a recession. But they said despite the tough conditions, they'll keep their operations open, even if it means their products will cost more to produce. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Gombe.
Stay with us. Talking Stocks comes up next. Welcome back. It's time now for Talking Stocks. 45 stocks traded today, of which 21 advanced, 21 declined, and 3 traded firm. The main JSE index advanced by 1,762 points to close at 288,399 points. The junior index advanced by 25 points to close at 2,926. 7.5 million units traded, valued at over $86.5 million on the Jamaican dollar market. And on the U.S. dollar market, 4,600 units traded, valued at over $700 US. 1834 investments with over 1 million units changing hands accounted for 13% of market volume. Pulse Investments was second with over 900,000 units trading. Jamaica Broilers Group for over 700,000 units, amounting to 9% of market volume, crossing the floor. Lasco Distributors Limited was the top advancer, up $13.35 to close at $4.50, followed by T-Tech Limited, up $11.11 to close at $6, and Portland JSX, up $4.71 to close at $10. Whilst the main decliners were ISP Finance Services Limited, down $17.15 to close at $10, followed by Pulse Investments, losing $15.56 to close at $1.52, and Consolidated Bakeries down $5.50 to close at $1.89. In foreign exchange trading, the Jamaican dollar lost ground on the U.S. and British pound today, but gained on the Canadian. The U.S. ended the day selling for $126.55, gaining 8 cents on the Jamaican dollar. The Canadian lost 31 cents to the Jamaican dollar to sell for $98.34, while the British pound gained $1.47 on the Jamaican dollar, closing the day at $174.58 on average. And that's the news, but before we go, a recap of our top story. Ministry of Finance steps in at the last minute to bring teachers back to the negotiating table after the teachers' union says there's now a serious trust deficit between them. Thanks for watching. For more content, visit our website at batvja.com. I'm Kalila Reynolds. Pleasant viewing.